Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Juno Temple. I'm the chair of the English department at St. Francis College, and I'm doing a little job for Theo, who couldn't be here tonight. Theo is the director of the low residency MFA program here at St. Francis College. And for those of you who are not in the program, I see a lot of you here are, but for those of you who are guests here at St. Francis, I just wanted to take 1 minute before Ben comes up to say a tiny bit about the program. I know that MFA students here have heard Theo say this before, but we are the only low residency MFA program in New York City. We have 2 10-day high-intensity residencies, one in January and one in July. And then the rest is done, you get a mentor and you do it through distance, what would you call it? Distant learning, distant workshop? Yeah, thank you. Help me with the lingo. It's amazing though, I've been here for all of the residencies, 10 days, like I said, in January and July, and they're very intense and people get to know each other really well and create an amazing community that stays and prospers over the months apart, and then everybody comes back together again. So it's a way to do life and to be part of a great creative community and do your writing, and I feel very proud to be part of this amazing program, if only very tangentially. The energy of the people here and the commitment of all of the writers that come to do residencies and the students is really, really inspiring to me, and I feel like it's enlivened St. Francis, and it's a very special program. And if you want to hear any more about it, you can email Theo Ganji or Athena Devlin, that's me, at SFC, and I can tell you, or he can tell you more about the program. But we are very proud of it and very pleased to have all of you here. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
and with that, Ben Snyder is going to introduce our speaker. Ben is a screenwriter himself, and the MFA students know him already. So I'll leave it with you. Okay.
Check. Is this bad for recording? Doesn't matter. Good evening. Thank you for coming out. It's my distinct honor and privilege to be introducing Sebastián Silva, a man who needs no introduction. Welcome. Normally, with someone so young and accomplished, I would be bitter and jealous. He's made 8 features, he's had a TV show, he has a legit band, he's also a painter, according to Wikipedia. And it's incredible, all the things that you've done. We'll talk about that. But I'm not mad at him because he's ridiculously talented. I'm just a fan. I've seen everything he's made, and I love the vast majority of it. Some of us just watched one of his more controversial and I think interesting films. Should we name them all? Do we know them? Have we seen? Who's familiar with his body of work or some of it? Show of hands? Okay, cool. Please give him a warm round of applause. Clap for this man.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk for a little bit. I have my cheat sheet of questions. And then I think most of this will be, you guys can, we'll ask questions and we'll open the dialogue up. Is this lighting terrible? Did I do a terrible job? Is it okay?
You look great.
You look great. Thank you. So Sebastián, how's it going?
It's going well. It's been like a month of like introspection, like from fall to winter. I've been practically doing nothing. I kind of do have a writer's block, I think, which is going to be interesting to talk about.
Cool.
Whatever that means, honestly.
The last person we spoke to was a guy named, his name is Jose Rivera, and he said writer's block is a gift. It's your subconscious telling you to stop and nurture your subconscious by going to see art and listening to music and spending time in nature, and then it'll dissolve.
I've been mostly on my phone.
Okay. He said don't drink because drinking kills your subconscious. It damages it.
Yeah. Luckily I'm not drinking.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go backwards to go forwards. I want to ask you, at what point in your life did you feel the calling to be a storyteller?
It was kind of like on my early 20s, I think. I did study film when I was like, after high school, I went into a film school, but just because I really had no idea what to do, and like, somebody was like, why don't you do film? It's just fun. It's like music and like image and story, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, really like that because I hated school. And I went into a film school in Chile, but I lasted very little, but I think it was then when...
You didn't finish? You didn't
No, I just did. This is not kind of good to say.
No.
It's fun.
Yeah, I totally am such a dropout. But yeah, I just did like 7 months and I kind of didn't follow like I bought a camera and like film everything, and I didn't start with so much writing, to be honest, but it was later on. I started writing scripts that were mostly like ways to channel like philosophical or existential sort of ideas and turmoils, like put that into a story. So they were like very infantile in a way, you know, like too therapeutic, or so therapeutic. But then after the third script, I wrote something that was very interesting to me and other people, and like.
Which one was that?
It's called Life Kills Me. Which
I've seen that.
Oh yeah, wow, this guy. It's like nobody's seen that. It's
It ends on the beach.
Yeah. It's really recurrent subjects. Like I have been fixated with the subject of death a little bit, or like the mystery of death, you know, or like the questions that death brings, and alienation also has been like social alienation and otherness and all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of impressive that in that first movie there are subjects and sort of visual fetishes that keep coming back into other movies.
Did you have big influences early on as a filmmaker? Were there certain directors or writers?
No, I really am a very ignorant person. I'm not a cinephile so much. I watch movies because I've been around them, so I watch more than the usual viewer, but I'm really not a cinephile. And when I studied film, as I told you, it was like, I don't know what to do, so I'll study film. And I remember they were like, bring your favorite movies next. So I didn't have one, really. So I went through my VHS at like home, and I found like A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this was kind of fun. And I brought it to school, and it was very pathetic. You know, everybody bought like Truffaut and like really fancy European movies, and I just had to defend Freddy Krueger in front of the class just because it was the one I found. But like after that, look, very young, I was highly influenced by animation, like American animation. Like from The Simpsons to Ren and Stimpy, all of the Disney classics, some Warner, like I was really, really into cartoons, so that was really big. And I thought that that's what I was gonna end up doing, cartoons.
You were an illustrator?
Yeah, I illustrated a lot, and like I was kind of a character designer for a while. Like cartoons, like a very sort of like 90s, 60s, 50, like from 50s to 90s style, like cartoon, American cartoonists, like very round edges.
Why do you think film as a medium stuck for you or called you?
I guess the storytelling became, because in the beginning it was animation, like because I was so in love with cartoons, like the actual illustration. But then when I did start writing, you become kind of addicted, and like because film resembles life so much, because it has like audio and conversations and people moving from, you know, and different locations, like it really feels like a slice of life, that you start seeing potential movies everywhere. You know, from like a weird like cruise that you went with your family and you hated it, to like, I don't know, like friends, parents divorce that seems like hairy and weird, and like just anything could be a movie, you know. So it becomes kind of obsessive but fascinating, and like yeah, you become like a story hunter without even wanting it.
Your body of work seems to have moved through different phases, and the early films were, to my knowledge, primarily in Chile, and with Chilean talents and crew. And then you brought some American talent down to Chile for some films, and Colombia, and then you made some films more in the United States with a mixed of people. Was that based on your growth as an artist, or just a natural evolution, or?
Kind of a natural evolution. I moved to, well, I wanted to study film animation, so I moved to Canada when I was 19 to Montreal. That it had like a boom, still has a lot of video game and animation development. And I didn't study because remember I hate school, so I quit that too. And then I stayed in New York, kind of just drawing and doing illustration for magazines, like kind of like making a living that way. And then I made the Life Kills Me and the Maid in this short 4-year period that I spent in Chile. And it was just that, and then I came back
And
here.
the Maid was a huge critical success.
Yeah, the Maid
went around the world.
Yeah, the Maid was crazy. Like it won Sundance, and then it went to the Golden Globes, and it was a movie that I shot at my parents' house.
How old were you at that time?
I was 27. It was my second film, and like it really was very unpretentious. Like we shot with a small digital camera. I used a location. It was my parents' house, and I really pushed for it. Like all the odds were against that movie being made, and I was like, we gotta make it, gotta make it. And yeah, it's sort of like
It was looking at class and power dynamics and
what?
class, social
Right, I mean,
class,
like, yeah.
many different things.
Yeah, I in Chile it's common to have a maid, just like middle classes and like lower middle class have maids. It's like just it's part of society, especially back in the day. So I grew up with maids, and like it was never comfortable, and like that was the movie is about. It's called The Maid. It's about her. It's about like her feeling part of the family, but not quite, and like that she could be disposable, but still she's been there 25 years. So it's about like how this woman has isolated herself from her world and become sort of like just centered in this like family that considers her kind of half-heartedly, you know? So it's about this woman coming out of her emotional shell, basically. And it's based on a real woman at my place. That movie was very therapeutic as well, yeah.
You're known for a variety of films, some of them kind of bigger production, and also some of them very small productions. So you've made, I've read, allegedly, you've made films in like less than 2 weeks on kind of shoestring budgets, and the films, like some of them are really good. So how do you make a film for nothing? What's the secret?
Well, I mean, I gotta be honest, it's not nothing. Like, the cheapest movie I made is like $250,000. That
Good to know.
right, but it's a lot of money too. Like for me, that's a lot of money, you know. So I feel that we've got like sort of numb by like the industry in Hollywood, where you're like 250, nothing. It's like that's a lot of money, you know. It's like that could like I don't know feed a family forever, you know, and it's spent in a silly movie. So it's like. I think I was lucky to learn from the beginning that when you make a project, like the next one doesn't need to be bigger. And like that's an illusion, and it really has to do with the industry and this sort of rush of productivity and success and like overachievement and always like
Growth.
you know, it's like, it's bullshit. You can like do something way smaller and poetic and, you know, like, hermetic if you wanted to after a success. Like you don't need to constantly be like outdoing yourself. It seems very stressful. So I was lucky that way, and like I have very little patience. So when I did write movies that were a little bigger, that they're very hard to make, especially if you wrote them and they're personal and like you need a couple of $1 million or 5 or 7 or 3. Like it's a business, you know. So it's like. Your movie doesn't have the ending everybody wants, or it feels too morally ambiguous, like what does it, or like whose point of view is it? You're like, it's everybody. They're like, that's not possible. Like you start having these arguments with executives that you're like, I need to get out of here. So,
can you talk more about moral ambiguity? Because that seems to be a big thing in a lot of your films,
Yeah.
and important to you. What does that mean to you?
yeah, I feel that ambiguity is like what I look for on a piece of art, whatever it is, especially storytelling. Like, I'm not a big fan of movies, especially when they're like political, you know, where they take sides so quickly, because then there's no intrigue for the movie ever. You know, like you're like, okay, yeah, we hate these fucking white nationalists, and like they are the enemy, we are the good ones. we suffer, they torture us, we win. Like, it needs to be somewhere like for instance, like, you could do one that a white nationalist is like being forced to be one, or like that he doesn't have the courage because his family is that, or something like that. Like a turn where you're like somebody that you're supposed to hate, you kind of can understand, and then you feel conflicted. Like, I think moral ambiguity is really special because then you go home with kind of existential homework or something.
Do you think American audiences have a harder time with that, holding moral ambiguity, than other audiences in the world?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've lived only in Chile and America. I've visited other places, but I feel, like here they really like to box things up. You know, it's like they stereotype actors very quickly. You know, like I'm very good friends with Michael Cera, which I've collaborated in many films, and like he got so typecast. You know, like he was like, dude, I'm the goofy guy forever. Like, and I will forever be this kind of like shy, awkward dude. You know, and like I mean, from that to what kind of genre you like, or you know, it's like, what is it? Is it a comedy? Like, why is people suffering if it's a comedy? Like, it feels like you encounter more of those barriers in America than in other places. Yeah, so I think so. I think like American audiences have a hard time like going through the pain of watching something uncomfortable and sad. You know, I remember once at the Lincoln Center, Mike Lee was showing a movie called Vera Drake, which is about sort of like an underground abortionist. Like, she's helping women commit abortion, have abortions because it's illegal. And it's the saddest fucking movie in the world. And everybody was laughing in the audience. Just like at any beat, any like awkward beat, like a candle would go off and people like, the candle went off. Just to release tension, you know? Yeah.
Do you feel in some ways in conversation with Mike Lee as a filmmaker? Or?
Yeah. And you guys are familiar with this guy? He's like a British guy that makes a lot of naturalist sort of.
And you both use improv somewhat. Do you?
Yes.
What's your process with improv?
What is my process with improv?
Yeah.
So I've written different kinds of scripts. Some of them are highly manicured and constructed, you know, and like it takes years to kind of come to the right form of the script. And some of them are just like an experience that I've done a lot of autobiographical work. So it's like experience that I had that were a good story you would tell at a dinner party, you know, and that like usually a good story that you share has a beginning, middle, and end. Like you never share a story that doesn't have an end, you know. So those ones, like those that are like, oh, this was so fun and like touching and moving and like I learned so much. And then it was that, I'm talking about Crystal Fairy in particular, like that is a movie we shot in 15 days and it was something that had happened to me, you know, me and a good friend. And we recreate pretty much the story of our journey to the north of Chile, to the desert, to take this hallucinogenic cactus.
Michael Cera
Right, he plays a version of me, yeah. So we recreated that, and I didn't have a script, but I did remember the story, so I wrote just the beats, but it was such a mess. Like, we had only 11 pages, and it was like, oh yeah, here they have a fight, and then the brothers are embarrassed. Like, that was the scene. So it was extremely challenging, and we were very lucky that we had no pressure from the producers, because I would have been nervous as a producer with that movie, because of the little sort of plan we had. But it came out great, and like, I'm always completely sure that every scene that I'm gonna shoot has a purpose, you know, that is not just because, like that you know what this scene is doing for the overall of the story. You're like, okay, this scene is advancing sort of this antagonism between these two characters because finally this one calls them out in something. So whatever you design for a scene, you gotta make sure that it's adding up to your story, hopefully not being repetitive, and just like you keep moving, you know? So it's like every scene has to have a purpose. Even if you decide that it won't have a purpose, like that has to have a purpose too. Yeah.
You have on your big and small films incredible actors. How do you do your casting?
I rarely audition, though sometimes you are forced for some movies to audition, but I find it very painful to audition people because you're in front of them, and how could you disguise your dislike for a performance? You're like, that was great. I really believe you were drowning. Yeah, I try not to. I really try, especially if they're going to be lead or secondary characters, you know, like people that I'm going to be I'd rather have a cup of coffee and like you sense it, you know, if you're going to get along. Like I feel that that's way more important. Like, I'm really scared to work with famous people, like really a famous actor, because it will always, unless you're making a huge movie, which they could be very abusive in their relationship, just because there's such a big asset for the movie that the level of diva-ish that they can bring about on a set and like make you feel that they're doing a favor to you, like I'm terrified of that dynamic, that work dynamic. So I usually like meet the actors, immediately ask them if they're assholes. Like I'm like, are you an asshole? And they're like, no.
Has anyone said yes?
No, but like some people have been like, look, I don't like to be line read. I don't like that if you're reading lines to me.
You don't know what that means? Line readings?
You go to an actor and instead of like, you basically act for them. You're like, look, I want you to go like, Mom, I didn't want to do it. And then you act with your silly accent and you tell them to do exactly what you did. And they're like, no. But yeah, some actors really don't like that. But yeah, it's been a really good strategy actually, to be like, are you gonna be nice to me all throughout the shoot? And like, they have to say yes, you know, in that meeting. And then if they're assholes on set, you can be like, remember when you said you were gonna torture me? Yeah, no, but yeah, coffee, for me it's better, yeah.
We have a lot of writers in here. What advice do you have, things you've learned along the way for our writers?
Right, I mean like, how many people want to write screenplays in this room, or are writing screenplays? Okay, yeah. Well, things that I've learned, a very classical way, you know Seinfeld, right? Yeah, Seinfeld has this book called How to Write a Screenplay, and that's the first book I read about screenplays. And it's very didactic, you know, like, you have to, there's like 3 plot points, you know, like you can check it out, it's out there everywhere. But I started that way, and I remember a friend watched a Lars von Trier movie where they were writing a screenplay, and then they would get a really big piece of paper, like a long piece of paper, and put it on a wall, and then draw a timeline, you know, with the minutes of how many minutes you think your movie is gonna be. It's usually 100, you know, 95. 120 if you want to bore people. But then you divide it, you know, like in 10 minutes, and then it's really useful to see it visually. Because you see how things are balancing out. You see when one actor shows up, and if there's a balance of like characters' appearances and their influence in the narrative, etc.
You do this when you're breaking a story?
Yeah, usually. So that I use before I write a treatment, you know? So I come up with the idea. I never start writing if I don't have an end. Like that's something somebody told me, and I was like, ends. And then it's like, I got stuck in a couple of screenplays where you're on page 56 and you're like, I don't know where the fuck to go anymore. Like, how come I did, like, it's really wasted time. You know, it's like, so yeah, have an ending is key. And then when I have an ending, I do this line, and then I start placing characters, kind of developing the storyline. And then when that looks fine, I go for a treatment, or like a bullet points, you know, like an outline of your story. It could be numbered or just written like like a story. It's just like as if you would tell the story in a bar. And then once you have the treatment, I think it's pure pleasure writing a screenplay, honestly. But my advice is share your stories, because a lot of people are very secretive and they're like, oh no, I'm not sharing. It's like, who cares, dude? Just like, the more ears you have listened to your story, the more feedback, the more you develop the idea.
You fix it when you're saying out loud to someone.
Yeah, honestly, you see them bored, you're like, and then she gets naked. Or he gets naked, or it's like, and she gets the gun out of his, You know, like you can measure how, like the level of entertainment or intrigue as you tell the story. That helps a lot. I think that also when you go in onto writing the script, I personally really don't care so much for the dialogue in the beginning. Like, it's very common to get stuck in dialogue, you know, where you're like, I don't want to go tonight. No, not tonight. I don't want to go. No, it's not right tonight. And it's like, keep moving, dude. Like, just tell me, you know, go for the actions, I think. And then you can go back to the dialogue and like, if you're gonna be directing, also you're gonna figure out the dialogues with the actors. They usually change. For in my case.
Is that how you use improv? Or?
Yeah, in a way, you know, I feel that it's usually movies that follow written dialogue, you can tell, you know, and they don't feel right, you know, and like, not to generalize, but I feel that a lot of American indies like have this written dialogue that is very clear, you know, every character sounds very witty, everybody has something funny to say, and it's like, everything is very balanced between them, you know. So that I'm personally very against that sort of artificial dialogue dynamic. So I always ask the actors, and I'm like, what would you say? How would you say, you know? Yeah, I'm never like fully committed to my dialogue.
Is that on set or during a table read or rehearsal?
Table reads work great. I don't do rehearsals. Like, again, it makes me a little embarrassed to be acting when nothing is going on. So of course you do rehearsals as you start shooting, but then why not record those, you know, like just shoot that. Yeah, some stuff comes while they're just, well, like after I say action and like the action starts unfolding, but yeah, usually you do it before, you know, like they write on their dialogues, they like scratch out dialogues. Table readings are amazing, I really enjoy them, they're so fun too. And you can just invite friends. Everybody does 3 characters and you laugh so hard, you immediately know what's working, what's not. Especially if you, the writer, are the one reading the actions, you know exactly when you're being boring. You start blushing as you read your script. You know, everybody's like reading and you're like, fuck, can't believe I wrote that.
What are you working on these days?
Yes, there's secrets, but if you don't tell anybody and then this footage is never released. No, yeah, one is very autobiographical, which just, I kind of want to get away from autobiographical material. It's been a lot and like, I just want to stop looking at my own belly button, you know? Yeah, one of them is extremely autobiographical. It's called May I Talk to Steven Spielberg? And it's a very embarrassing story. When I was 19, I went to Hollywood to find him with a project that was going to save humanity from themselves. And of course I didn't find him, but I found his mom and I kind of stalked her a little bit. So yeah, that's one. It takes place in LA and it's a very strange like period movie. It's like 2001. Then 9/11 happens in the midst of my hunt. And it's very just ridiculous and but also kind of spiritual in a fun way. So that's one. And then the other one, it's just like a bigger project that it is really kind of a secret, but I'll share it, but please just like don't tweet it or anything. That it's like a Michael Jackson movie that I wrote. I started toying with the idea when he died. I was like, why did he die? He was not supposed to. And then I was like, he should have lived forever. So I was like, what would have happened to him if he did live way longer? And I'm like, what would have happened to his face? And then I was like, he would have turned into a droid. And then I wrote that.
So it's science fiction.
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah, it taps into science fiction. It's very much about celebrityness and like identity and transhumanism. It touches a lot of subjects that feel very current. And then, as you can imagine, it's a very hard movie to make.
Do we get new music from
It's actually, he's not a singer or a pop star. Like, he's the king. He's just the king.
of the world?
Is the king? You never know. Yeah. He just lives in a mansion and has like hyenas and roller coasters and like he's obsessed with a self-image and he wants to disappear, live anonymously. It's a very interesting story. It's kind of campy. Of course, I assume people will know it's based on him, you know?
But you don't use his name?
No. I never use anybody's name. He doesn't sing or dance or anything. So it's very allegoric, and that's why I also like it. I'm not really a big fan of biopics myself. But yeah, I mean, the documentary just when it came out, I'm like, we're screwed. Like, this will never happen. But then, as I was telling you outside, like, I can easily separate the creator from the creation, and like, I think that I don't judge him morally. I don't, you know, it's like not my place. But he definitely, it's like a Greek tragic story. His life is incredible, you know. So it's like, it's kind of based on that world that he created for himself. So
now you have some films that seem very autobiographical and close to your lived experience, and then some that might be further outside of what you personally experienced.
Yeah.
When you're writing from a point of view or a perspective that's not your lived experience, how do you make sure it's authentic or remain accountable to those people that you're representing?
I make sure that those stories, well, they usually carry elements that I'm really just in love with, you know, like mental health, or the lack of it, you know,
Magic.
In Magic, I was just thinking about Magic. I was thinking about Life Kills Me, and I was thinking about this last one that I did. It's called Children of the Storm. That it's a movie that takes place in Puerto Rico right after the hurricane. And that was a story that I wrote 11 years ago. Can you imagine? Like, I was gonna make this movie. It's a mermaid movie. It's about a boy that like really extreme poverty neighborhood in Poland, in the Baltic Sea, and this boy finds this mermaid ashore kind of dying, and like he develops like this relationship, tries to capture it to save his dying mother. It's a total tragedy. And then that movie was abandoned for whatever reasons, and then I got offered to make a movie in Puerto Rico after the hurricane, and I'm like, mermaid, hurricane, let's do it. And that movie also, it's like kind of a fable. So I do these two kind of movies, I feel. There are these like tragic sort of fables with fantastic elements, like way more, with a way more sort of planned out aesthetics, you know, and tone, like more tonal films, you know. And then the ones that are like experience that I had, and that they're like just naturalistic and real dialogue and real emotions, and hopefully everybody feels that that's really truly happening. Yeah.
What are you most inspired by these days, art-wise, film or other kinds of art?
Well, I paint a lot, so I've been kind of staying, because I have those two projects that I mentioned, like, you can only push that much for a movie to get made. So luckily I had some writing gigs and I could save some money, and like I took time away just to like hang out at home and write like thoughts, not even movies. Like, as I told you, there's no story that I feel that I'm so compelled to tell right now. So yeah, like drawing and taking walks under the effects of psychedelics sometimes, and going to museums and meditating and doing like some spiritual weird practices, like Ouija board. No, I'm kidding. Just like meditating, you know. Yeah, watching. I've been watching a lot of things. Like, they invited me to be part of the Academy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm grateful, but really, I don't know. I don't understand what to do. But I got all the movies, you know. So I watched kind of every movie that's been put out, and that's been. I never watched that.
What did you like this season?
I was telling you, I really like the Tarantino film, and I like The Lighthouse, and some documentaries.
Uncut Gems.
I like Uncut Gems. Like we were saying, it was
Exhausting.
It was. I mean, it's an action movie. No, action movies are like by nature pretty exhausting. I watch a lot of Disney movies. Yeah, for real. I watched Bambi recently, and I'm like, this movie is a masterpiece. Like, just like, I know it's like a really like childish thing to watch, but the craft is just too incredible. Like it feels like now with like the overload of like streaming services and networks, like content doesn't have any value, and they're just like mass producing content, and like honestly, like Netflix kind of sucks. Like I don't usually find stuff that I'm inspired. Everything seems rushed, and like it feels that there is a software telling them what to put out there, like an algorithm that is like put, I don't know, 2 white people, 1 black person, 1 Chinese, 1 redhead, and then some transgender and gay. Like it just like it feels that every story is like there to please some kind of social standards of, I don't know, it feels really strange right now where we're at creatively. There's very few things that I'm kind of inspired or thought-provoking, you know? Everything feels to want to like fit the mold in a way.
Well, I'm gonna pause on my questions for a second and open this up a little bit. Anyone out there have any thoughts, questions, concerns? Yes.
You shoot all on video, or you shoot on film?
Oh yeah. I've only shot 1 movie in film. It's called Old Cats, and it was right after the Maid. It was a very what's the word? Yeah, it was a very small production. Mostly took place in this old couple apartment, some stuff on a park nearby, so it was easy to manage. But and also it was like a full written screenplay. We were working with very old people, like they couldn't, one of them couldn't memorize their lines, so
It's a great movie.
Yeah, I think it's on iTunes if you guys are curious. But that one is the one that we shot in film for that reason. But
And you also do stuff improvisationally on film?
no, that's the thing. You really can't, you know. And like, there are movies that I've shot. Like for instance, a movie called Tyrel that I made after Nasty Baby. We only shot it in 11 days, and we never had a break. And in that movie and Crystal Fairy, I found myself holding the camera. Even though we had a DP, I was like, you know, we're rushing so much. I know exactly what we need. I'm gonna do camera work. And then this is a technique for whenever you're on set and don't have time. Is like never call cut. I would just keep the camera on and keeps everybody on edge. Nobody goes to their Instagram, you know. Like I use very little makeup or none. I really don't like makeup. So there's not that much retouches to do, so you can just keep the camera on for 45 minutes and make this take where I would like, for instance, be shooting 2 people walking away from a house from behind, and then I would scream like, freeze! And they would like truly freeze like a game, and then I would run in front of them and be like, okay, after I say action, like 10 seconds, keep walking, and I would do 3 angles in 1 take, you know, and like that only digital allows you to waste so much time, you know, on like footage or have so much footage.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So we just watched Nasty Baby before, and I was wondering, like, why did you choose to also act in it as the star, and what difficulties arise as being the director and the main actor?
Right.
Who's struggling?
You know what it was? It was that I remember it was in Chile that I encountered that sort of storyline. I was with my boyfriend, and there was like this. It was ambiguous whether he was homeless or not, but it was definitely mentally unstable, and he was such a like threat to the neighborhood, and it was kind of scary, and like I know I'm being recorded. I would never kill anybody, right? Like that's right. But I was like, I would fantasize with killing this guy because he was so annoying. But it's like, oh, I'm gonna kill, you know, like that. I like that I'm justifying so much that I'm saying. It's very suspicious. But never mind. So I had this fantasy, and then in my building there were a lot of old ladies. My neighbors, my landlord was an old lady. And it was kind of fun to be there because I was really only so I was like, what if they helped me? And I started developing this fantasy of getting rid of this like threat, you know, and then that's why I decided to star in that movie, you know, and like that idea turned into, and also it was kind of a Law and Order, I think, plot that we saw, where there was a homeless guy that was missing in a neighborhood that was being like kind of gentrified, and like the cops would go to the neighborhood and nobody would say anything, so it was like a conspiracy just not to, you know, to not disclose what happened to this threat to the fancy neighborhood. So it was all of those mixed, like all of those narrative points, and then that's why I put myself in it. And being in it, I guess it was a little bit of a mistake, honestly. I had a great time, and I think my crying, I bought it. Like, I'm not embarrassed by my performance. But I feel that the movie could have gone a little farther if we had like Ryan Gosling instead of me, you know, or somebody, because we did have a choice to bring a more famous actor. And then, yeah, we had such a little time that it became very stressful to be in front, and like, but there I learned stuff that you can direct scenes even from being on set acting, you know. You can like drive the other actor's emotion, or like create an unexpected turn with what you're saying, and put the actors on the spot, and just create very sort of spontaneous situations, you know. Especially if you're the director and the writer, you know what you can play with. So that was very fun, but I don't think I never did it again. I wouldn't do it again. Unless I get her implants. It's a joke.
In the back, I see a hand.
You talked about moral ambiguity. Could you talk a little bit about the racial and the queer slant of the film we just saw as it relates
Nasty Baby.
yeah, as it relates to moral ambiguity? And then the second part of the question is, could you talk through the backstory of the title of Nasty Baby?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So did y'all hear that? So you want to hear about moral ambiguity as it relates to race, as it relates to the film as a queer film, and then the title.
Yeah. Okay, first to the race question. So being Chilean, truly you don't get a grasp truly of what race means in America. It's really an American sort of equation, you know? Like, so you're always a little bit of a foreigner to the pain of the black community, or to the entitlement of the whites. It's like something that you will always be a little bit of a foreigner, you know? So that kind of helped me write these characters without any prejudices, you know, being like, oh yeah, like the guy that is on my neighborhood that seems to be like harassing the gentrifiers, it's a black dude, you know, so it's like I wrote it as such, instead of like, I feel that if I was American, I'll be like, no, but wait, if I write it black, then they're gonna say that I did this. And then you get into this like issue, you know, which is totally legit, you know, but I think that gave me a freedom. My ex-boyfriend was black and he was a carpenter, and like we live in that apartment, so that was a no-brainer. It was just our story. And then I started realizing the sort of cross-racial narratives that were there, you know, that it's like we are killing together a black man who is a homeless guy, but we also made him be sort of a threat and very homophobic himself, you know, and violent even to a pregnant woman. So like you do villainize that character a little bit, but then you become, I made myself the villain, you know, which is the gentrifier who decides to dispose of this body and keep moving with his sort of life ahead, his prosperous life ahead with family, but also the crime, it's an accident, you know, like everything, it's an accident. Like he just can't take it anymore. The guy's like throwing rocks at him, hits him with bottles in the face, he falls, cracks his head open, goes into the apartment, grabs a knife, they have a knife fight. It's like, the whole thing, it's like, seems to be an accident, of course, until they asphyxiate him, you know? And then burn his body. Right. But then the moral ambiguity there in terms of like racial stuff is like there is a black man also participating in the murder of this other black man. So sort of like there was sort of the problem was it was canceling itself in a way, or taking a different shape, you know, creating a little bit more ambiguity again.
And the title.
And the title, Nasty Baby, well, I really like dancing, but I've never done it, nothing. I just do it at parties. But I was offered to do a dance piece or a performance piece for this thing, and then I love embarrassment. I think being embarrassed and going through the threshold of complete self-embarrassment is really good for your ego, like just weakening your ego and also getting creative with no fear, you know? So I wanted to embarrass an audience by doing baby talk, and to talk like a baby in front of grown-ups, and like just like really pursue the grossness of a grown-up baby talking, which in couples I'm disgusted when they do that, or like just like even babies baby talking, it's disgusting to me. So yeah, I designed this performance that it was called Guagua Cerda, which means nasty baby. And I never did it, so I brought it into this movie. And yeah.
You had your hand up? No? Is there a hand over here? Yes.
I was curious, how much of the characters do you figure out on the page, and how much do you kind of leave the actors to make their own?
Yeah. You know what? Like, characters really come to full form, for me at least, when you are on set with the actor, and the actors brings 50% to it, honestly, or more even, you know? I rarely do backstory. Like, I never like, oh yeah, his favorite color was purple. Like, I never do that. But for some people it's really helpful, but I usually are more committed to their personal state of mind. You know, like, what are they going through now? And I never care so much how they got there in the first place. Yeah, I mean, table reads help a lot. I work with non-actors, you know, where you ask them to just be themselves, and that's enough, you know, because they're laughing like they laugh, they're like looking how they look, they walk like they walk, and that's it, like full on 100% person there that will be portrayed as such. But for instance, like, this is interesting, like with Tunde Adebimpe, which is this musician mostly, but he's been acting lately, who plays my boyfriend in Nasty Baby. I thought he was gonna be a different character, and then when we got on set, I noticed that he wasn't as extroverted as the character, you know, and like, the first day I was like, no, you gotta like, and I was trying to get my vision across, and like asking him to sort of abandon who he was or his natural way of reading these lines, and then I gave up very quickly, you know, and I'm like, no, like, let him channel whatever feels comfortable, you know. Otherwise, the problem with like pushing a wacky character that you have, or like something that is very specific onto somebody that doesn't quite fit in it, is that there's going to be too many inconsistencies all throughout the movie. Like, he's going to be lost. You want your actor to know exactly how they have to come and respond questions, or run, or scream. Like, you know, they should never be questioning. Like, once they know what they're doing, they should never question any of their actions until the shoot is over.
Yeah, back here.
Yes, your approach is so fresh and original and not American. Can you speak a little bit about how being Chilean has informed you as a filmmaker and artist, or maybe being queer, or whatever has informed you, because you really come from a very original, fresh place?
I guess it's because I kind of didn't go to film school in a way, you know, where, I mean, that's one of the things, and the other one is just like an aversion to bullshit, to be completely honest. Like, and you, like, there's so many meetings and so many things that relate to the Hollywood industry are total bullshit. Like, in a way that it's because it's such a big industry that movies become sort of products more than like a piece of art, or like like intimate confession of yourself, or like a display of your favorite sort of like scenes or landscapes or whatever, sensibilities, you know, and like, I think yeah, and like also, I mean, that's one thing, like just going a little bit against the conditioning of the industry, you know? And then again, it's like just being, I guess, aware, even though it seems like self-flattering, but like trying to be aware to the process where you're like, you wrote some line for the actors, you're behind the camera, yes, those are the lines you wrote, but it's not looking good, you know? And so yeah, change it right there, sit down with the actors, or like, for instance, movies that you're kind of winging them as you shoot them, like, yeah, you had planned to shoot at the gas station, but it happened that there is like an ostrich farm right across the street, and you prefer the ostrich farm than the gas station, but it was already written for the gas station, then who cares? Go to the, like, stuff like that, to kind of like have the clarity to make choices as you go and not get stuck with the always, like,
Is that pragmatism, is that a Chilean trait?
no, give me some credit, man. No, I think like I'm 40, like I learned what I like and what I don't, and then there's a lot of Chilean people, I think, that make movies way more traditionally and orthodox, you know, like people, like directors work in very, very different ways. Personally, I consider myself a little mediocre, and I'm okay with it. And so that's why I don't carry out my vision to the extent it should. I don't care so much for my vision, you know, like I rather sort of adapt to my conditions. I was once told by this like rock star DP called Chris Doyle. He did all of Wong Kar-wai films and some of Gus Van Sant, whatever. He's like a big DP. And then he told me that in film you do what you can and not what you want. And it was something that it really stuck with me, and it's really true, you know? That it's like you're not making a drawing at home by yourself, you know, you're not writing by yourself at home, like you're with a team of 15, 10, 40, 60, 200 people. The actor couldn't come, like the weather is shit, so you never really get what you want. And if you keep pushing for your vision, like, I don't know, man, like, it could get very difficult to complete it, you know? So I think like adaptability is huge, and like, that's the way I guess I learned how to function. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask two questions. One is, you know, based on the nature of your films, do you find it hard to find producers to support your vision? And secondarily, being sort of an auteur, although I think you deny it, do you find that being an auteur makes it easier or harder for you to get your movies made?
Look, I think I lucked out because when the Maid was popular, it was a time that social media wasn't so huge and there weren't like that many filmmakers or many movies exposed, you know? It felt like it was a smaller kind of handful of things that were going on. So I guess I managed to make a name a little bit, you know? It's like, oh, Silva and Sundance, it's like, I showed all my movies there, so I lucked out, and then I do have a name that the independent worlds of LA and New York, they know me, so it's like I got offered, I was offered to be in a very like fancy agency, whatever, and like I could have meetings, you know, I could pitch my movies, and like my career has not been built upon my wishes, truly. Like most of the movies that I've made are movies that I've made accidentally because it's really hard to plan, especially when you're an author, as you insulted me now. I like it. Yeah, I guess it really depends, man, because for me it would be more difficult to have to respond to executives from big corporations. Like it would stress the fuck out of me. I would live a miserable life, you know? So that would be way harder for me. And then, being an author, it's way more unpredictable. My material ambitions have really diminished, and I don't care. Like, I sort of learned how to live with my priorities. So I would say for me, it's easier to be an author, you know, and like, you wish that from time to time, and like, luckily it happened to me recently that I got offered to direct some television, you know, which gives you money to just be at home doing psychedelics. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I don't regret anything, you know, like, and the bigger movies that I wanted to make, for instance, I was gonna make this movie, Captain Dak, which was like, I don't know, an $8 million movie, which is like really exceeding the budgets of my movies that the biggest is 2.5, you know? And there was like, Will Ferrell was attached to it as the main character, and we went to like Cartagena, we prepped forever, and then he bailed out 1 week before, with no notice, and like, there was no way to contact him, and like, we couldn't get any other actor, and the whole film went to shit, and then it was like a year and a half of efforts and waiting, and like, people's work, like other actors' commitment that just like went down the drain, just because a movie star didn't feel like it, you know? So that was highly disappointing and kind of a slap in the face. It's like, dude, you want to work with movie stars? Like, get ready for this kind of bullshit, you know? And then that's when I went and did Tyrel with just friends. It was like the cheapest movie I'd made. It was 10 days of shooting and whatever. It went to Sundance, like a couple like art house theater for a couple of weeks, and then that's it. But it was so rewarding. Like, you know, it was like the best 11 days of my life, and I was like, I mean, of my shooting life. And then I was like, this is what I want to do, you know, like this is the kind of movies that I want to make. And I keep writing more ambitious stuff, don't get me wrong, but I don't have any expectations. It's not that I learned how to be cynical, but I learned how to like just really flow with, you know, like it's just timing. Like as I told you, like this screenplay I wrote 11 years ago got made a year ago. And like, and so on. So another advice, if you want to get your stuff produced or sold, like have more than one project at a time. Because like sometimes the story that you wanted is not the story that people are looking for, you know, it's not what's resonating socially or emotionally to anybody, and it might eventually, you know, but it's like good to have choices that you can present.
Do you as a writer respond to kind of social political climates? Like, do you feel as a Chilean compelled to in some way deal with the moments politically in Chile happening right now?
It's a good question, but I do believe that everything is intrinsically political, you know, like I remember The Maid, it's a very political movie. It's a movie about class, but yet the original inspiration was solely emotional. Like it was really the relationship that I had with this woman and how it pained me, and like my memories about her relationship with my sister, and like I was like really immersed into my emotions and not so much into like, okay, so this disadvantage with this and these are the mean, but they're like, I wasn't really plotting for the movie to be political, but I think it's one of the most political movies that I've made. And then I'm not apolitical, but I feel that I'm more versed and into more like emotional realms, emotional or psychological realms, and that's where I can manage myself better and find more resources. And I know that everything will be intrinsically political, but I wrote a script that it was just very angry at Trump, like really angry. Oh, this was fun. This was very political. I think it's kind of impossible to make, but they sent me recently a script called American Woman, and it was about how Melania came to be Melania, and it was kind of a comedy, of course. And then I was like, okay, it was very funny, like a page turner.
You killed her?
Huh?
You killed her at the end?
No, I didn't write it. It was offered to me, and I was like, what if this movie, like, what if you make it way worse? Like, you make them like eat shit or something crazy. I don't know, like something very scary, you know. And then I was like, okay, I would only make this movie if I can make it like deep fake entirely. Like the whole movie is deep fake. So you watch the movie and it's really the Trumps. Like you see Melania going down the stairs and like Ivanka's in the pool, and it's like it's them with their voices, and like that for me, like I really got like I got so excited. Like I was like, I need to make this movie because it felt like such a political punch. Like it was really, I was gonna hurt punch writing. Like I mean Trump writing his heart. Like I was like gonna humiliate his family and him, and like the lack of empathy that they have with each other and everybody. And yeah, you couldn't. Yeah, it was not legal and
It's
like.
illegal to do that?
I think like technically it's very hard, one, and then
It's expensive to do that.
but I don't think so. Like I don't really know how deepfake truly works. Like I did some consultation, but then when the lawyers were like, dude, you cannot make a movie with their faces. Then I stopped. But I still feel that you could if you make it in Mexico, and then, I don't know. There is a way to make that movie, which is really scary. But it's the only movie that I feel that I'm like, this movie feels like it would really get set on fire. You know, like it felt very exciting.
Yes. Any other? Yes, in the back.
I'd like to ask a very basic question. You seem to stay very true to yourself as an artist, and you follow your vision, and that kills me. On your way to the person that you are today, or the artist that you are today, has the topic of surviving and making money off of what you do ever been a topic for you, or I'm trying to find out. Did you have to go like take detours to get to where you are now, or have you just stayed true?
How do you survive with integrity?
Who was this actor that I was like seeing the other day? It was an interview. I forget his name, but he was like, you know what? Whenever I got offered anything, he's a famous actor. I forgot, but like he said that he did anything. Like he acted on cruises. Like any offer he took, anything that was related to the craft of acting, directly or indirectly, I've done that a little. I think I started mostly as an illustrator, and I managed. Like, look, it's not easy. It's like the thing is like sometimes you get big paychecks because of like let's say like a $2 million movie, you can make $80,000, for instance. Like as a fee for directing, and then forget about the back end because. Unless you like have a hit like Moonlight or something like that, it's very rare that you would see any money, with your indie. So it's good to like just scrap that director's fee, and then you can get like a sum like that, which is a lot of money for me, and then I just leave out of that for as long as I can, while I'm trying to get other stuff made. And there have been crossovers where I'm like completely broke and questioning everything. Like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? This is so unreliable. Like, when will I learn? And then all of a sudden you get another gig or a movie gets made, But yeah, I feel that personally, I haven't still yet, like, I don't feel settled, I don't feel like, oh yeah, man, yeah. It's like I'm still kind of on the war fields, But I always say, like, filmmakers as independent and like, low budget and struggling as you can be, like, we should never really complain. I mean, like, I'm talking from a privileged place because I've been lucky with my films, like, people have liked them and I've got different producers to help me, but we're making films at the end of the day, There's people that have way more harder and glamorous jobs that have way less freedom and stuff like that. So it's like, when I hear filmmakers complaining, I'm like, what? Yeah, it's so lucky to even be considering making movies because it's playtime, really,
Thank you.
Yes.
A few other hands. Yes.
How do you know if someone's right for your film, or like a part in your film?
Like an actor?
Yeah.
What's the question?
How do you know when an actor is right to play a particular part in a film?
I think it really has to do again with like being accommodating. I remember like I had no idea who Michael Cera was, right? And like I had made this movie, The Maid, and he knew I was in LA, and he told his agent he wanted to meet me, and he's like, buddy, we should work together on something. And I'm like, yeah. And then I put him on a movie just because he wanted, like, and I didn't even think if he was right or not. Like, I'm like, oh, he wants to work with me, nice. I'll put him in a movie, and like, it was similar with my brothers. Like, I'm like, oh, I need 3 like younger, my brothers, yeah, come, you want to be in my movie? Like, I kind of like don't don't think it so much. Don't think it. Again, I don't have so much of a vision. You know, like I try to use the elements that life is giving me and then adapting to them. It seems like an easier way to live your life in general. But of course, there's like actors that don't work. You know, I've had a lot of meeting with actors that I'm like, this is not gonna be right at all. You know, I usually people with a sense of humor get my attention immediately. You know, because you know, like somebody with a sense of humor have a deep sensibility, and like somebody that can laugh at themselves can be as serious as they laugh at themselves with themselves too. It's like it's two parts of the same. So yeah, that's a really good side for me, a sense of humor.
Anything else? Please thank Sebastian for spending his